Going to go ahead and get started. My name's Hayden Harrington, one of your co-hosts today, along with Dustin Miles, and our featured guest today, Dan Handford. Super excited to have him on today for this webinar about how he recently raised $20 million during a pandemic. So very excited to dig in and to learn more. With that being said, I'll toss it over to you, Dustin, to introduce yourself to everybody.
Great. Yeah. Dustin Miles. Super excited to have Dan here. It's funny. I don't remember exactly when it was, but I was on Dan's podcast last year. So anyways, great guy, and really successful, and super excited to have you here, Dan. And I guess kind of just jumping right in, wanted to have you introduce yourself, where you're from, kind of your background, and what you do prior to investing in multifamily.
Sure. I'd love to kind of dive into that. And first off, let me thank both Dustin and Hayden for having me on. Looking forward to sharing here today and, hopefully providing some value to your audience here a little bit. So a little bit about me. I'm located here in South Carolina, and I'm here with my wife. I'm going on 13 years with her. And then we have 4 children, all under 10. So I have a 9-year-old girl, 8-year-old boy, now 4-year-old. She just turned 4 last week, a 4-year-old girl, and then a 2-year-old girl. So definitely life in our household is very busy, but also a lot of fun at the same time. And so prior to kind of going into real estate at all, I'm a chiropractor by trade. And when I was going through chiropractic college, one of the things that we needed to do was to learn off of a spine model. Like a model, plastic model of the spine, so you can learn kind of where all the different structures were on the spine. And that's when my first business got started. It's actually selling spine models while I was in chiropractic college. And that was what started a company I still have today, which is called shopanatomical.com. And that company continues to do 7 figures a year in revenue. And it's now in its 13th, 14th year of business. And that business was what allowed me to start my next business, which was a chiropractic business, debt-free, and then started to integrate into the medical side of things. So I had what's called an MD-DC clinic, where we had the chiropractors working alongside the medical doctors. And the reason why I started to do that integration type piece of it, plus I also started to hire on other chiropractors to work for me, is because in the first couple of years of practice, I realized that I could only see so many patients an hour, and even though I had owned my own business, I was still capped in my income. And because of that capping of my income, it caused me to want to hire on some other people to be able to do some of the work, so I didn't have to do it on a regular basis. Because any of you that are on here that have your own business, if you go out of town for a week, guess what? There's nobody there to do your business for a week, right? If you're in what I call a dancing bear business, meaning that if you're in the business and the moment you stop dancing, the revenue stops. That's a dancing bear business, and that's what I was in. And so decided to start to hire on some people to do some of those tasks, and then started to integrate the medical side of things. And then fast forward to today, we actually don't do any chiropractic in our clinics. About 5 years ago, we cut out the chiropractic completely from our clinics to solely focus on the medical procedures that we were doing, which is a lot of regenerative medicine. So we do a lot of prolotherapy, PRP, stem cell treatments for all orthopedic conditions. And then we also do a lot of arthritis treatment. So we do a lot of, back braces, knee braces, injection therapies, things like that, all non-surgical. And we have 4 clinics. We have one here in Columbia, South Carolina, have one in Greenville, South Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina, and then North Augusta, South Carolina. And I started that 4th clinic is really what kind of hit me when we started paying the taxes, because we were the first clinic that we opened up. We improved or implemented the systems and the processes that could be duplicated in the multiple clinics, and so they were profitable very quickly. And so we started to have to write these large 6-figure checks to the government. And my wife and I were kind of, frustrated with that, because all of you have done this before, where you work all year long and you're like, I got to give that much back to the government, or not back to them, but give it to them, right? It's never theirs to begin with. So that kind of tax burden is really what kind of sparked my interest into doing a lot of research inside of real estate. And then about 2.5, 3 years ago, I decided to completely step out of the clinics full time. And I have a good team. I have about 50 employees in that group that actually run that particular company. and I have a corporate meeting with them once a month. So I'm still involved in the practice on a very limited basis. I kind of tell people I play the Warren Buffett role, right? Because Warren Buffett stays at home all day long and just phones into his CEOs and checks in on them. So that's kind of what I do at that business. It cash flows nicely, and it's all debt free as well. So needed a place to be able to park that money, and then that's when I started the passiveinvesting.com group, where we syndicate large real estate investments. Right now we're focused on B plus and A class assets that are in between about 20 million to 75 million in range, and primarily here in the Carolinas.
Awesome. And how long ago was it that you got started investing in multifamily? And was that as a LP, or did you jump right into a GP role?
Yeah, it was actually about 2.5, 3 years ago when I first jumped in. So I first jumped in as an LP, did an LP investments in a couple of projects. And then after I did my LP investments, I started to do some co-GPs and partnered in JV partners with a couple other groups to really kind of build my track record and my credibility, not just with the investors, but also with the sellers and the brokers. And then we did our first transaction in December of 2018.
Oh, wow. Okay. And what market was that in for your first deal?
Greenville, South Carolina.
Awesome. And are you guys I think you just mentioned, are you guys just looking in those markets? Are you looking at surrounding states or anything like that?
Yeah. So earlier this year, when things started kind of tightening up a little bit, even before COVID, we had started to look outside of the Carolinas. Because in the Carolinas, we don't look at all the markets. We only look in the North Carolina side and the Charlotte and then the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill kind of MSA. And on the South Carolina side, we only focus on Greenville, South Carolina, and Charleston. And then so because some of those markets we weren't seeing a lot of deal flow that really made sense, we started looking inside of other markets like Atlanta, Georgia, Jacksonville, Florida, and even Orlando. But so far we haven't acquired anything in those other outer line markets.